You're just an ordinary guy who happens to be born in this family with Paramahamsa Vishwananda, who is your bro, as you refer to him often as. And suddenly, your life becomes very, very different.
This is when he was 14.
Yeah.
Vibhooti would start to materialize on every picture. The moment they removed it from the one picture, it just went everywhere.
That's what
You
it
just
is.
had a chat with Ma, who says, many devotees of mine get no vision over lifetimes. I've given you 3 in a day because of your brother.
Yeah.
Right, which is an important point here. Blessings. And he gets up, he's like, can we go to Port Louis now?
I don't think I was ever worthy of any of it. But I think I was just blessed to have Guruji's love. That was the first experience with Nourishing the Day I had. I wasn't looking because I was scared. I fell to his feet and he started to speak. He spoke in Hindi, I think. And then he said, so is this better for you? And he spoke to me in English, Creole and in English.
He spoke Creole.
He spoke Creole and then English.
When accusations are made in the sense of, oh, it's just a magic man, or it's some mysticism, or it's just powers and whatever.
People come to Guruji because they're seeking the truth. They're seeking meaning and purpose.
One thing that's never, ever changed is his relentless pursuit of helping us love God. Jai Gurudev Ravi, Jai Gurudev Mayuran.
Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev, everyone.
First time on the podcast, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
6th time on the podcast, Mayuran.
Wow.
Resident. So Ravi, it's an honor to have you here. Ravi, for those who don't know, is the cousin of Paramahamsa Vishwananda.
I am.
And you see, one of the things that we've talked about on different episodes is the miraculous nature of Paramahamsa Vishwananda, that he isn't a normal being, that incredible things happen in and around him, have happened. We've attested to that. We've spoken about that at large. And I think it's something that both intrigues people. Obviously, some people become wary of it as they question it because it's not normal. That's the whole point of it. It isn't normal. And so I would want to continue that discussion a little bit today because we have a unique opportunity. Ravi, you grew up around Guruji. You had access to Guruji in a different way, saw things, experienced things in a different way than most people ever will. So I think we wanted to just sort of dive into a little bit of what that was and some of the experiences that you might have had with him. And a word of warning, obviously we're aware that some of this stuff may seem difficult to believe or it's really like out there, but I think that's the whole point. I think we have to be open about these things and transparent about these things. I, for one, feel strongly about that. I think that it's important that if these things are going on, people should know and have the chance to do what they want with it in a way.
Yeah, I think that you're taking a risk by putting Ravi on this episode because the stuff, the experiences that Ravi has had with Guruji have been phenomenal. They're totally unbelievable. They're borderline insane. And you look at an ordinary person would immediately just shrug it off and say, these guys are just crazy. These guys are just making stuff up. They're trying to get clicks. They're trying to get views. They're just trying to promote their guru or whatever it is. And so that's why it's brave to put Ravi on and just say, look, this is what he has experienced. We have experienced something of our own thing, nature with Guruji and our own path with Guruji that's of, transcends the normal rules of life, of science, empirical evidence and everything else. We've had that, but Ravi's, I think, is a whole nother level of experience. But I think it's important to say from the outset, I've known Ravi for 20 years now. Yeah. Same for you. Maybe Ravi, just give your credibility, just who you are as a person. You haven't just come out of a mental hospital, have you? No.
No, I don't think I have. No, so I've grown up with Guruji. I grew up in London, mainly. Went back and forth visiting Guruji. Spirituality wasn't something that came to me directly. Our family isn't that spiritual. Everyone expects Guruji to come from a very pious Brahmin family. That's how you'd write it in the books, right? It wasn't like that. We were a very simple family, big family, and I grew up in London. So I wasn't exposed to spirituality. I didn't really know much of it. I grew up in a Mauritian household in London with my mom and dad. And spirituality was like many working families or immigrant families in the UK. Spirituality was something on the back burner. It wasn't something that was forefront of our lives. So I grew up in a very normal family, going to school. Every now and then Diwali would happen, they'd light some lamps, and there was spirituality would happen. And then I'd go to Mauritius, and there was Guruji. And it was a complete transformation of what spirituality really was. It became real. For me, there was I didn't read any books. I didn't know what stories were out there. So when I was with Guruji, all of a sudden, everything just lighted up. It was amazing.
So basically, you're just an ordinary person in East London, in the UK.
Absolutely.
You're an Arsenal fan.
I am.
You're
Yeah.
an-
Big Guna.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. You're working. You're married. You've got 3 kids. And for you, it's not like you stood on a mountaintop or you're in
No.
a cave doing tapasya and meditation for several, 15 decades, and then suddenly Paramahamsa Vishwananda enters your life as your cousin,
Yeah.
and then shows you all these miraculous things to reward you for your fruits of your tapasya. You're just an ordinary guy who happens to be born in this family with Paramahamsa Vishwananda, who is your bro, as you refer to him often as.
Yeah.
Who for us, he's and you as well as our Sadguru and Guruji, and suddenly your life becomes very, very different. The transcendent, the divine, God, Bhagavan, becomes so tangible, it's just almost totally unbelievable. So maybe tell us some of the miracles that started happening in the early days and build up from there.
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to do that. I mean, I guess it started off visiting Guruji in Mauritius from when I was very, very small. He was completely different. So I knew straight away he wasn't the normal guy that would want to go and play football or run around with you. And he was always, he had this connection with spirituality, with God and praying. And he took something that everyone probably thought was mythological, and he made it real for me, right? So when we were small, we would watch the Ramayana on TV, and it was really big in the 80s, right? It was a huge show. And he would take me outside as 6 and 8-year-olds, and we would play the Ramayana. We would reenact the Ramayana. And that was the starting of spirituality with me, because I had no idea. Before that, if I'm being really honest with you, I had no idea I was even a Hindu child growing up in London, because my parents was not spiritual, like I said. I remember my mum had a friend that used to take care of me, childminder. Lovely family. They're a Mauritian Muslim family. And I remember on Eid, I would go there and I'd say Happy Eid, because it was on the radio, Sunrise Radio. So you'd listen to that and you think, right, Happy Eid, everyone. And then one day on Diwali, I went there and I said, Happy Diwali. And they just looked at me in shock. Like, what are you saying? So I had no idea what what religion was. So I've gone to Mauritius, and Guruji started to reenact the Ramayana with me and play those games. And that was the starting point of where spirituality came into my life. And then, of course, as Guruji grew, I think when he was about 14 or 15, everything changed.
So before that, your recreation time, almost your entertainment time was just soaked in spirituality, because Guruji just found every avenue possible to just funnel in God, spirituality, Ramayana, Mahabharata, some kind of worship.
Absolutely, yeah. But he wasn't so blatant. So he would try and connect with you. So I would go home. I'd always stay. So since I was 5 or 6, whenever I was in Mauritius, we would stay together. So we would sleep in the same room. We'd hang out together. So every time I would go back to Mauritius, he would try to relate with me initially. So football fan, right? So he would say, I like football. So he would take some pictures of some football players from underneath his bed and say, look at these are football players. And I'm like, but why is it underneath your bed? And then when you look in his room, it's just a mandir. Yeah. It's just a full-blown mandir, like with posters of different deities everywhere. And I would have to sleep in that room with him. And actually, I used to get scared, because you had Mahakali on the picture wall. You'd have Narishingadev. And you'd be like, wow, this is super aggressive, you know. And I'd have to sleep in that room with him at night. And but he was really sweet. He would tell me stories every night. So this is the story of Mahakali. This is the story of Ram. This is the story of Sita. So I'd start to get ideas about spirituality and religion that way. But for him, that was everything. That was his center point. Everything he would do was revolving around spirituality. Then, of course, when he was about 14 or 15, the phenomenon. Sorry, can't say the word.
Phenomenon.
Yes, thank
Yeah.
you. Of the vibhuti started to materialize in the house, and that changed everything, of course.
So just expand on that. The vibhuti, what actually happened?
So, what happened was Guruji had a small temple that, funny enough, when I was last in Mauritius, he went to buy a picture, I think it's of Shirdi Sai Baba. And we bought it together. We'd just come from a temple where they were celebrating Shirdi Sai Baba. So we'd gone to this temple, he'd bought this picture. And I bought one too. So we bought it together. And then he hid it in his wardrobe, I believe. And Vibhuti started to materialize from that picture. And I remember we got a call from home, from Mauritius, to say, there's Vibhuti materializing on the Shirdi Baba picture. And they tried to clean it.
This is when he was 14.
This is when he was 14.
Yeah.
And then it just continued to come. Vibhuti would start to materialize on every picture. The moment they removed it from the one picture, it just went everywhere.
So you wipe it off, then Vibhuti manifests again.
Again,
And
yeah.
in another picture, Vibhuti is materializing. So Vibhuti is just holy ash, basically.
Yeah.
There's ash started pouring out of these pictures, out of these deities.
But not just from the picture of Shirdi Sai Baba. It was all
Everything.
pictures.
From
The different
Krishna,
deities,
from Rama, from every... If there was a deity picture in there and any type of god, it would materialize. Actually, when he came to London, it was materializing on every picture possible. So even though I had
in
photos...
your house too.
Yeah. So a couple of years later, Guruji came home to London. And so someone had invited him for a puja at their house. So he flew into London and he spent some time with me. And the moment he landed at my place, and my uncle's place too, for that matter, the whole house was just covered in vibhuti. I mean, every possible picture in the house started to cover with vibhuti. Even pictures of me was covering with vibhuti. It was unbelievable. Wherever you'd put we used to have a picture of, you'd have a little picture of Rama or Krishna, vibhuti. You have the small murtis, vibhuti would materialize from the ceiling to fall on the picture of
On
the
the
deity,
murti?
of the murti, yeah. Or they'll,
So materializing on the ceilings.
yeah,
To drop on top of the
to drop
deity.
on the top of the deity, yeah.
So you've been to Guruji's room in Mauritius, what Ravi was talking about earlier, where he slept in those early days.
Yeah.
You've seen those deities. I've seen those deities.
I have, yeah, for sure.
I've seen those deities manifesting nectar, oils, yeah,
perfumes,
kumkum,
chandan, vibhuti.
just pouring out. It's if you go to that room, it's not a huge room.
Small.
It's a small room, but it's just absolutely caked in vibhuti, ash, amrit, all kinds of stuff.
And vibhuti in different colors. You'd get pink, you'd get red, you'll get kumkum, you'll get turmeric. I had a picture on Narasimha that used to materialize just turmeric. Fresh, just coming out the picture. And then so Guruji removed the turmeric and it would come from inside the picture, not to make mess on the floor.
Inside the glass
Inside
frame.
the glass frame.
So why, Swami Revatikaanta, do you think this is happening? Like, what do you see this as?
You know, it's one of those things that it's like, I can never say. It's not, you know, I'm here, I would have some opinions, but you see, the thing is, I think the best way to treat these things is to leave them as, it's a divine mystery. These are things that are happening that it's not for us to necessarily understand. But what I would pin it down to at that time, especially that age, 14, 15, as I've heard it recounted by Guruji himself, it was time. It was an awakening. It was time for things to move forward, time for things to kick off. And when something like that starts to happen, you have no choice anymore. Like when something that abnormal, supernatural, incredible starts to happen in and around you, it forces your mind to commit one way or another. It forces you to take a position. It forces you to challenge yourself, challenge your conception of things, your belief systems. Everything just starts to get challenged. I know from speaking to Guruji's mother, and I at one point I had a very nice conversation with her over a cup of tea, and she was very honest with me about how challenging it was, incredibly challenging, incredibly difficult for her to rationalize all of it, to make sense of it, because like you said, it wasn't an overtly religious family.
No, we weren't.
And so from her perspective, I remember her telling me sort of, I didn't want it to happen. I wasn't happy it was happening. It wasn't this, like, you know, sometimes the devotees hear of these stories and they think, wow, amazing.
Yeah, you can imagine.
I wish that happened in my house.
Yeah, you can imagine if this was a biography being written in a few hundred years, back in, say, the 15th century or something like that.
Yeah.
It'd be like, oh, and everyone was ecstatic that this Vibhuti
The divine signs, and everyone was chanting Jai Shri Narayan.
Yeah.
Right?
But the reality is, as Ravi, you're saying, is as Swami Revatikaanta said, is your family wasn't really that spiritual.
Absolutely not. And we weren't ready for that, right? And I guess now we're talking about it. It was like the divine saying, here's an announcement, Guruji is here.
Yeah.
Because it pulled people in. Initially, I think a lot of people heard about the miracles and they wanted to come to see Guruji's room. And then they wanted to spend time with Guruji, and he started to heal people, and there were many, miracles that happened around people that intrigued more people to come, and then the miracles would bring people in as well. So I think at that time it was some sort of calling card to the world to announce he's here, he's arrived.
But your family saw it as an intrusion.
We absolutely saw
as
it
chaotic, as turbulent, and I imagine Guruji's mum would be like, I wish things would just go back to normal.
My aunt would cry because she would see people waiting at the house to come and see Guruji and just queuing to come in. And it was, how do you cope with that? Everyone at the time was really, I mean, admittedly, there were some people in the family that were very excited because it's a phenomenon. I've got to stop saying that word because I can't say it. But it was something completely different. And people were really excited by it. But in whole, my uncle and my auntie were not. It wasn't something they were welcoming.
I remember speaking to Guruji's mom, and she was just saying, I just wanted my house to be clean. I wanted to live a normal life. I wanted to have a normal son.
I just want to have a clean house.
And I come home from, grocery shopping, whatever it is, and I have a queue of 100 people outside my door because they want to see my son. And also in a sense, even as a mother, like, in a sense, I felt like they were coming there to harass him. Like, it just, even though they weren't, I mean, it's a bit of a spectacle at some point, I guess, right? People are just sort of hearing about this and they want to come and see what it's all about. But coming back to the point of the calling card, I think, again, it's that sometimes divinity needs to slap us in the face of, like, I'm here.
Yeah.
Like, I need you to
Wake
recognize
up.
how overtly I am here to such an overwhelming extent that no matter how much you want to deny, eventually you have to make peace with it.
Yeah.
So it's important to say that, yes, I think to a certain degree this would have pulled some devotees in. But if I fast forward to the situation now in 2025, especially Bhakti Marga, I would say that for almost every devotee, I can't speak for every devotee, but almost every devotee, these miracles are symptomatic of his divinity, but they do not define his divinity.
Yeah.
So if none of these miracles happened, and there was no manifestations, and we go into the other big experiences you've had as well, darshans, whatever it is, none of this happened, no miracles whatsoever. For me personally, it would not change my faith in Guruji at all, not even an iota, because it's, when I hear about these miracles, it's a glorification of him, but it doesn't define him. It's not the actual foundation of my faith in any way, shape or form. Because I remember when I first came to Guruji, there were people, let's say from another organization, who was kind of like, oh, Mayuran's following the miracle man. They're following, he wants some kind of manifestation or some kind of experience or tantric experience or something like that from this personality, and that's the reason why he's going. It's like, no, people come to Guruji because they're seeking the truth. They're seeking meaning and purpose. That is the fundamental reason why people come to Guruji. But we want to explore this other phenomenon, because to have this phenomena as from a personality, from a guru even, or acharya or anything like that, it's extremely, extremely rare.
But I absolutely agree, and this is why I think it's important to have this discussion, no matter how, again, controversial it may be, for one simple reason, which is this. Absolutely, I can sign into everything you said. That's not what defines my faith, neither, or any of us. That's not, for none of us, it's the case. But at the same time, just because I don't have it at the center point of my faith, and I don't think it's the most important thing, even close to it, Guruji personally, he never preaches about it. He never talks about it. He doesn't teach it. He doesn't promote it. He doesn't any of these things. And yet, so the tendency may be, well, because it's not at the center of my faith, because he doesn't talk about it, let's just ignore it. Let's just not talk about it and almost like just dismiss it or normalize it as if it's not a thing. And I feel like that would equally be a disservice to it. So neither is it at the core, but it's also a disservice to just how phenomenal and different and whatever it may be, it is that it needs to still be brought to the table so that people understand. And I think there's power to saying it and then saying, but that's not why I have faith in him, and that's not why I'm following him, and that's not what I'm pursuing. Because the experience that you shared, people started accusing you, saying, oh, Mayuran, you're just following the miracle man. I've heard that 100 times from all sorts of people, from all walks of life, from all different religions and traditions and faiths, within Hinduism, outside of Hinduism, within Vaishnavism, outside of Vaishnavism. They come here and the first accusation is following the miracle man, following the tantric, following the mysticism, following whatever else, because they can't see past the show as if that's why people were interested in seeing that. No, actually, it's because in Guruji, not because of the miracles, but perhaps aided by the miracles, there is tangible truth, tangible divinity. And I'm sure we'll get to that through the stories.
But you know what's so funny is Guruji himself is so any miracle. You know what he's excited about? He's excited about the miracles of the saints.
Yeah,
When he talks about the saints, of the Vakari saints, Mirabai, whatever it is, he's like, did you know what happened? And Giridhari came and he gave that prasad and he rescued that devotee. And then he's excited. His own miracles, Mark, he doesn't care. Yeah. He's like, oh, Guruji, you did this miracle. He just doesn't care. Even if he's done the most astounding thing, he's just on to the next thing. He doesn't even mention it. He doesn't talk about it. He doesn't brag about it. If other people talk about it, he's not really that interested. It's just something that's just happened. And this is what I'm saying. It's completely symptomatic, a natural extension of his divinity. It doesn't define him in any way, but it's just a natural extension. I mean, what do you say to that, Ravi? How, to put it really colloquially, how chilled out Guruji is about the whole drastic stuff that happens around him?
He plays it down completely. He never talks about himself. He's I would say he's even shy about it to an extent. He doesn't allow for us to do that. So
when the people were queuing outside his house, what was Guruji's take on the whole thing?
Guruji's take was he was here to help people. I remember in the early days when Guruji first came to London after the miracles started happening, we tried to take him out just to give him a day out in London, just for him to relax. And he enjoyed all of that, but he wasn't happy. And then, of course, how it always happens, people found out he was in London. They asked if he could come and see him. And when they came in hundreds, right? And they would queue up and they would see him. And I guess I was sort of the first type of Jay type figure, if you want.
Jay Trey is a security guard of Guruji. Yeah.
So I was the first type guy at the door, letting people in. And yeah, it was relentless. But he would probably start seeing people from around 5 or 6 in the afternoon, and then go on until around 1, 2 in the morning, just one after the other. Everyone was allowed to come and have an interview and experience him. And then after that, I remember after the first night, he'd come out and he said, you know what, I'm just so happy. And I said, but why? You've been in that room all night. And he said, no, but I've just been able to help people. And
people. Yeah. I mean, one thing I've said before in this podcast, and I'll say it again, there's a lot to be marveled at in this. There's a lot that's detrimental in this. Like, it'd be easier for Guruji to be a mainstream compatible figure that doesn't do anything that challenges the mind all that much, just says wise things, gives, powerful tools for transformation, and that's it, right? Toes the line, plays by the rules, doesn't do anything that freaks anyone out, so he conforms and everybody can feel comfortable sort of propping him up. I'd have a more successful podcast if I wasn't here saying, I believe this man is God incarnate for reasons A, B, and C. Like, all of this it's just inconvenient, like it was for his mother, like it was for the family, like it was for different stages of his life, like it is for himself. A lot of this is inconvenient if your aim is personal growth, personal success, personal this, that, and the other. But if it can help someone, to hell with convenience. And this is what I've always felt from Guruji.
Yeah, I mean, even the lingams, like the Shivaratri, what happens is, he has a succession of lingams that his body produces, and then he comes out through his mouth. I've had people say, oh, it's a show. Oh, he's doing it to attract attention and things like that. But we've been there in a dinner table setting, right? Completely mundane, where you see the pain starting to come, you see how it starts to enter his throat region, and then how he's there holding his chest, holding his throat, rocking from side to side. It's very, very painful stuff, can be very, very, very intense. And then he's essentially comes out of his mouth and it manifests out his mouth and it lands on the dinner table. And then someone collects it, puts it in water, ready for worship to be distributed. And then he just carries on having his tea. And we don't even speak about it. No one talks about it. He will ask, oh, what's the program going on? What bhajans are we singing then? He's changing the song. And this is what I'm trying to say is like, if anyone thinks that Guruji's doing this for show, as you said, it actually adds inconvenience and barriers to the situation. It's not in his interest to make it a show. And when you've had the privilege of his personal setting, you start to realize, again, as I said before, he doesn't care about these miracles. They are symptomatic of his natural being.
He's not the person that he appears to be to a lot of people. He's just not.
Yeah.
So, but I wanted to come back to, so we're now at a timeline, we've skipped ahead a little bit, 18, 19, but was there anything else in the early years, like, big experiences that would really stand out?
I mean, in those early years, it was mainly the manifestations, the materializations. Right. And then it was around the 18 or 19 age where things started to really pick up, well, especially for me.
Right. So share something.
Yeah, no, happy to share. So I think my first main experience with Guruji, or being with Guruji, was obviously I shared that I spent a lot of time with him. We would share the same room. We had done from.
You guys are like brothers.
We are.
I introduced you as his cousin, but he calls you bro. You call him bro. That's the reality.
I was, look, out of all of my family, I was extremely fortunate because I think I was born just at the right time, that we shared the same sort of age group, and I benefited from that. Right, we became really good friends, and I never had any brothers or sisters, and I desperately wanted a brother, and all of a sudden Guruji was like there, and he took on that role for me, and I'm eternally grateful that he did, and yeah, we've just been there for each other. So I think at that 18 or 19 range age, that's when I started to experience really, intense manifestations and experiences with Guruji. But it was all set around his room. So we spoke about the miraculous room in Mauritius, right? So I would spend a lot of time in that room, and it transformed from the room with just pictures on the walls, which I told you I was afraid of anyway, to now pictures with vibhuti all over the walls. So it became more intense. And Guruji would tell me about the different pictures and experiences. And one night I couldn't sleep. I was really struggling to fall asleep because right opposite his bed there was a picture of Mahakali, and it was and she looked ferocious, and she was covered in kumkum, and so I was struggling to sleep, and I sort of said to him, bro, why do you have a picture of Mahakali right in front of your bed? Like, what? He goes, he just laughed and said, look, just close your eyes and go to sleep. And he was trying to do some meditation, and he was doing his bits and pieces. And if you've been in the room, you guys have been in the room, right?
Yeah.
So you go through the door, and his bed was placed by the window. And the window is in Mauritius is all barred up.
Yeah.
So people can open their windows and no one can jump in. I think in most tropical countries it's like that. So
because of animals and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And so my space on the bed was always by the window, and Guruji would be on the side. So he was doing his prayers and his meditation and whatever he was doing that night. And then all of a sudden I just felt something change in the room. That's electricity that went through the room. And I felt there was a presence in the room with me. And I know Guruji was there, but he was fully meditating, and I didn't want to disturb him because I would get told off. I was the younger brother, right? And so I tried to ignore it. And then I heard a voice, and she said to me, it was a female voice, and she said to me, Ravi, you called me. Your brother called you. Your brother's called me for you. So I thought, damn, that somebody's talking to me, and she's not meant to be in the room.
So hold on, I can imagine the audience listeners, it's already starting to get a little bit freaked out by what you're saying.
Mhm.
So let's just recap that. So your Guruji's there meditating, and you hear it, you feel a presence, an energy change in the room,
Mhm.
and you hear a voice, a female voice, which says, "You called me."
Yeah, you've called me, your brothers asked me to speak to you. So I had a decision to make here, right? The decision was, do I engage with this voice that should not be in the room? It's not possible.
You didn't see anything.
At that moment, no, nothing. And I wasn't trying to look. So I was trying to sleep. That was what I was told to do. I was told to go to sleep. So I was desperately trying to fall asleep as quickly as I could. So I thought, look, ignore the voice and try and sleep. Maybe it'll go away. The voice got a bit upset. After like a minute of waiting, the voice said, I've been called here to speak to you. Why are you not speaking to me? At which point I thought, damn, what am I going to do? This is not real, right? I wanted to wake Guruji up.
Did you not think it was a voice in your head?
No. I didn't think that because it was real. It wasn't. You know, if you were standing on the other side of the room, Maran, and
Yeah.
you were talking to me,
Yeah.
you'd hear it in your ears, right? You'd
Yeah.
know, you'd acknowledge someone's there.
Yeah.
I was hearing it that clear.
It was externally audible to your ears.
Externally
right?
audible
So it's not
to my
like
ears.
hearing voices traditionally in a kind of a psychotic state is that they're in my head and
No,
stuff,
no.
but you're actually hearing it from across the
Yeah,
room.
it was tangible, and I knew where she was around the room.
You can identify the
I could
source,
identify the
direction.
space. Yeah,
Right,
exactly
right.
that. So at that point, I thought, right, how do I get out? Because I don't want to engage in this. This is not something I want to engage
You didn't think
with.
to nudge Guruji or something?
No, I was scared of nudging Guruji as well.
So you're scared of the voice and you're scared of Guruji?
Yeah, because Guruji, look, Guruji's loving, but if I'd stop him in his prayers or his sleep or his meditation, whatever it was, I would be in deep trouble, right? So I was like, what's the easiest thing to do here? I thought, get the hell out of the room. I can't go over Guruji. That would be extremely disrespectful. And the voice was coming from the other part of the room. So the end of the bed on the right-hand side. So I can't go that way because I'm going to have to then engage with something that in my mind, should not be in that room. It just shouldn't be in that room. So I literally looked at the window and I started to shake the metal to see if I could somehow pull it out and squeeze through the window and jump out. I couldn't do that. So at that point, I had to engage. So I asked, she said again to me, what do you want? Why am I here? So I had to say something. So I said, could you explain who you are to me and what you're for? And
This is in English.
in English. So I would speak to her. She was talking to me in English because that's
Yeah.
how I could communicate with her. So I said, can you explain your form? I thought she could be some sort of Ma, because I thought, look, a ghost or demon of some sort could never appear in Guruji's room. That's just never going to happen. So I'm going to go with Ambe because I thought Durga is very merciful. She looks very loving in the pictures I've seen. This Kali Ma doesn't look loving. So I said, I'm going to go with Ambe. So I said in my brain, so I said, can you explain your form and who you are, Ambe? Hopefully she accepted that. And then she did. So she went on to explain her form and who she was.
Details?
She did go into details. I was too scared, petrified to pay any attention.
But she was talking about her ornaments, what she holds. Or
Yeah,
whatever.
she talked about her different forms and how she appears and how she would. At that point, I looked at her and she was doing the different mudras and positions of her
Okay,
hand.
so how does she look?
She was wearing a simple sari, red sari. She had a dark complexion.
Right? How
And-
tall was she, would you say?
She was probably about 5 foot. She wasn't huge at
Yeah.
all. And she was in a very subtle form. So she didn't, I wasn't afraid. What stood out was her eyes. She had amazing eyes. But I still was thinking, okay, maybe I can get out. Maybe I can still escape this room. So she finished that. And then she said to me, Ravi, I need to leave now. Can you please place some kumkum on my head or bring a lemon? So I was like, what? Guruji has kumkum materializing from his deities of different murtis. It was there. And he always told me, never touch my kumkum. Because if you touched it, it would stop materializing, and because I would put my energy in it. So he said, never touch, never touch. You'll get in trouble if you touch. So I looked at the kumkum and said, I can't touch that kumkum. And I really want you to leave respectfully, absolutely respectfully. I'm so glad you came. You've told me your forms. Yeah, I can't touch the kumkum. And so she started to get impatient and said, well, go and get a lemon. So I ran out of the room, managed to go past her, go out into the room, into the passageway, and the kitchen is right opposite.
Yeah.
So I ran into the kitchen and I couldn't find any lemons anywhere. There was a dried small, like the tropical Mauritian in India, you have these limes. They had one of those and I took it to her and I cut it and she literally just disappeared.
So what you saw as you cut the lime, you saw a female form who was dark, wearing a sari,
Yeah.
Red
sari, piercing eyes,
She just
long
gone.
hair.
Yeah, sort of. I didn't really focus too much.
Okay. And as soon as you cut that lime, that personality just disappeared.
Yeah.
And all the while Guruji was meditating.
Yeah.
Okay.
So after that happened, about 20, 30 minutes later, Guruji opened his eyes. He turned around to me and said, "You're not sleeping?" and I sort of said, "No, I'm not sleeping. I'm definitely not sleeping." And he said, "Well, what's wrong?" And I sort of said, "You know what's wrong. We had a very close relationship, right?
Yeah.
So forgive me if it sounds like I was a bit disrespectful, but in those days we were extremely
course,
close,
informal,
and we were brothers, right?" So I said, "You know what's wrong?" And he just laughed, and he goes, "Tell me something. How did she sound?" I said, "Bro, she sounded very angry." He goes, "Really?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he said, "Are you sure?" And I said, "And she was scary." He was like, "Really? Scary, did you say?" I was like, "Yeah, scary, bro." And then just as I said that, he closed his eyes in that moment, and then she popped into the room again. and I was like, "Damn!" And at this point, I was like, I must have done something wrong. I must have done something to offend her. So I started to shake the metal window again, and try to divert. And she said, "Ravi, what did you say? Did you say I'm scary?" And I said, "No, ma, no, yes, no, I didn't mean it." And she said, give me the trishul in the corner of the room and I will use it now." And I was like, Guruji had a small trishul behind the Durga Murti. And I was like, "Ma, please, no, forgive me." And she left.
Just disappeared.
She just disappeared and she left. And then Guruji, she didn't disappear straight away. She came back again. And she said, "Listen, tomorrow I'm going to appear in Guruji's temple 3 times, Ravi. 3 times I will appear in the temple. And you're going to have to recognize me once. If you don't, tomorrow will be the last day you see." And then she went.
So she's threatening that your life would end or something.
Absolutely, my life would end.
If you did not recognize her.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was petrified. I couldn't sleep.
Understandably.
Guruji came out, opened his eyes again. So he goes, "So what's happened?" And why are you not sleeping? And I'm like, "Bro, what do you mean? Why am I not sleeping? You must know what's going on." And he just laughed and he had a smile on his face. And I said, "Look, you need to help me." And he was like, "Why? What help do you need, Ravi?" And I said, "Bro, look, tomorrow, Ma's going to appear in this temple 3 times. And I have to recognize her at least once. Otherwise, tomorrow she's going to come and take me out," she said. And he just laughed. And I'm like, "This is not funny, bro. Genuinely, I'm going to be dead tomorrow night. How can you be laughing at me?"
So you took it very seriously.
Look, absolutely.
But what about Guruji laughing and sort of
I didn't find it funny at all.
no kind of reassurance from his laugh and
none at all.
You just thought this is it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then I kept shaking him to say, "Look, help me. You need to help me." Sorry, I was shaking the table. And then he said to me, "Bro, it's really simple, isn't it?" And I was like, "If it's that simple, why don't you just tell me?" So he said, "Look, tomorrow morning, what I need you to do is this. wake up early, go to the temple, obviously have a shower, get yourself ready, go to the temple and wait. And every Mata that comes into the temple, because every woman is a representation of Mahakali, touch their feet and everything will be fine. So I was like, okay, that sounds simple. I can do that. He said, now go to sleep. We'll talk in the morning. I couldn't sleep. I probably stayed awake until sunrise, which was about 5:30 in the morning. I woke up, showered, put a kurta on. I opened the temple. Normally, my uncle would do that because he would go to work. So I opened the temple. He looked at me weird when he left for work. And I just sat there. And I thought, how am I going to do this? It's really random, right? So if I said to you, Maran, tomorrow morning, go and touch every Mataji's feet outside of the temple.
Yeah.
How'd you do that? So I devised a technique to do it. I took a box of incense and I would just walk around with it and then drop it in front of the Mataji. And I would pick it up and touch their feet. Guruji came out and I said, bro, do I have to do this to everybody? He said, everybody. So I said, even even Tina, which was his sister.
Yeah.
So she's like my sister too, right? My little cousin. No, she's older than me. Older cousin, actually. Yeah. I was like, do I have to touch her feet? But we used to fight like cat and dog, me and Tina. And he was like, yeah, even her. So I literally touched everyone's feet. This went up until around 11:30 in the morning. At 11:30, Guruji came to me and said, I think I want to go to Port Louis. Let's go to Port Louis. And he went back into the house. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm meant to be here from morning to night, recognizing Ma. If I've missed her once, I'm going to die tonight. And he wants to go to Port Louis. So you having a laugh? Yeah. Is this serious? So I went into the room and I said, bro, you cannot be serious. We're not going to go to Port Louis now. My life is on the line and you're going to Port Louis. It doesn't make any sense. And he sat there, smiled, and he goes, okay. He goes, shut the door. So I shut the door. He closed his eyes and Ma appeared in the room. And I was like, you are kidding me. What's happening?
I'm just thinking of the listeners listening to this, normal people.
I'm not even thinking of them. I'm thinking of myself listening to this and just laughing like this is so wild.
But Revatikaanta,
and it's not the first time I've heard this. And still, I just,
You're thinking it's wild. I'm living it. It was completely mind-blowing for me. I couldn't believe what was happening. Yeah. It wasn't real to me. It wasn't, some people read spiritual books about different people and experiences. I hadn't read a single book in my whole life.
Brother, some people read Harry Potter.
Yeah, some people read Harry Potter, exactly.
And then this stuff happens.
Yeah. But I'd never, Harry Potter wasn't out by then, I think, if I'm not right.
You're 14, 15, is that right?
I was about 15, yeah.
15, okay, fine.
I couldn't understand what was going on. And then she reappeared in the room. She was here again. And so I fell to my feet and I held my hands together out of respect. And I was really worried. And she said, Ravi, I'm pleased with you. You've done really well. Firstly, because you've listened to Guruji. You've listened to your brother, she said. But also, you managed to recognize me. So I'm very happy with you. And she said, look, there are many people that meditate on me, who venerate me and pray to me. But I don't appear to them. Not in this life or many lives. But today, because of your brother, I've appeared to you 3 times in nearly one day. You are very lucky. And I said, thank you, Ma. And she gave me a blessing and she left. And I was in this surreal moment of happiness. I turned to Guruji, he opened his eyes and goes, can we go to Port Louis now?
That's what we were saying though. Guruji's so chill about it.
This is what I mean. Exactly, exactly how you described it. He just doesn't care.
It's just normal.
Yeah. It's normal. It's just a natural symptom of his being. That's what it is.
You just had a chat with Ma, who says, many devotees of mine get no vision over lifetimes. I've given you 3 in a day because of your brother.
Yeah.
Right, which is an important point here. Blessings. And he gets up, he's like, can we go to Port Louis now? Port Louis is the capital of Mauritius, by the way.
Yeah.
But how do you reconcile that in yourself? So an ordinary person will be thinking, I read Devi Mahatmya, I've been worshipping, I'm a Shakta, I've been doing all this, and Ma has never appeared to me. I love her, I adore her, I've done puja for years, nothing's ever happened.
Yeah.
You don't do anything.
I've done nothing.
And then you just rock up one day, three times, she appears. How do you reconcile that in yourself?
I really can't, Myron. And if I'm being really honest, I don't think I was ever worthy of any of it. But I think I was just blessed to have Guruji's love. And I was asking him a question about Ma. And he wanted me to really experience who she was in her purest form. And he can do that, right? It was his way of giving to me. I totally probably don't deserve it.
So some people would equate Swami Revatikaanta like the experience of the darshan of Divine Mother, and you should have some kind of blissful experience.
Yeah.
So that sounds to me quite clear. It wasn't a blissful experience.
Oh no, not for me.
Right.
I'm not going to pretend it was for 1 minute.
There was no realization or transformation of consciousness.
No.
Nothing like that at all.
No.
Just an ordinary guy, 15-year-old boy. He just saw Ma and was like, oh my God, three times. And was just like, okay, I'm getting a death threat. I need to do something about this. And then suddenly this whole Leela manifests, and it's like she gives you a blessing.
Yeah. I mean, on the way out, Guruji said to me, from time to time she'll come and visit you. I was like, really? He goes, yeah, she'll come and check in. And I was like, okay. And it did happen. So I was working in a mobile phone shop for a while when I was going through uni in college. And a lady walked into the shop, and I was the so-called assistant manager at the time, covering the store. And this lady walked into the shop with this big stick. And she was shaking it around the shop. And so all the staff guys came to me, my colleagues, and said, well, you're dealing with her. You're meant to be the manager. I was like, oh, damn. So I went to her, and I started speaking to her. And I said, look, can I help you? And she said, give me something. I was like, well, what do you want? It's not my shop. I can't just give you something. And she said, no, give me anything. You give me something. And I was like, right, do you want this phone case? I'll buy it for you. And she was like, no, I don't want a phone case. If you want to give me something, give me something. And then she said to me, you don't even know who I am. You don't even know who I am. And I remembered Guruji in that moment. And he said, she said she'll come back. And I said, in my head, I said, Ma. And then she stopped, she smiled, she held me in my heart. She goes, you recognize me better. She goes, next time I see you, you give me something. And then she just walked out the shop, and she went down, she left. And I was in shock. I didn't know what happened. So my colleague came up to me and said, you dealt with that pretty well, didn't you? And I was like, yeah. And so I ran out the shop to find her, and she was just gone. There was no possible way of her disappearing, because
she's walking around with a big stick, just swinging it.
Yeah, she was just gone. And I called Guruji and I said, Guruji, this happened. And he goes, yeah, I told you she'll come and see you.
But Swami Revatikaanta, how do you reconcile this? This is like Ravi. As I said, I put in there Arsenal supporter just to make it really clear. This guy is an ordinary guy. He's in East London, got a great sense of humor, good guy, but he's having the most amazing, phenomenal experience, divine experience that you can imagine. And how do you reconcile this?
I think a few things. I think, first of all, the spiritual merit of someone or not should never be judged by externalities. First of all, I'm not making any claim. I'm rather making a claim that we shouldn't think the opposite is true, that if someone's doing intense tapasya, that equates to high spiritual achievement and merit and deserving things. I think that's all a very unknown science. A chain of cause and effect and all of this is very difficult to ascertain. I mean, look, we look at people's lives, we live around people, we know people for our entire lives, partners, family members, only to one day find out you never knew them at all, because you just don't see people. You see 10% of who they are. So imagine knowing what you deserve or don't deserve over countless lifetimes of what you've done or haven't done. It's impossible. I appreciate what you're doing to point out just how normal Ravi is, because in some sense you are, right? It's not that externally there are any justifications, so to speak, apart from the one, and I think it's the key one here, that you are Guruji's brother, right? And as a result of that, I don't believe that something like that happens by chance. First of all, I don't think there's any theological grounding for that would happen by chance. We don't believe in that, structurally speaking. And second of all, that is the nature of grace. Grace makes what would otherwise not be possible. Mm-hmm. That's why grace is as valued as it is, as cherished as it is, because it takes something that is at a particular level and elevates it to something else. And I think the normality of the experiences you're describing for me are symptomatic of whose grace they are happening by.
Yes.
Because Guruji's way of dealing with the divine is so chill, so normal, so natural. I think that's the best sort of expression. Because he doesn't make a big deal out of it in the sense of the, how to put it, the sort of the splendor and majesty of it all. He makes it so natural. The experiences you're describing are incredibly natural. She's just coming, talking to you. Like it doesn't seem like that classic movie scene where a light appears and they come and you hear some drums and music and flowers start raining from the heavens.
There's Indian movies from the 80s.
Right, exactly. So I think it's a lot of that. It's that the grace comes from him, and therefore the flavor of the experiences in his way.
But you know that last thing you just said about the phone shop thing. Your colleagues coming up to you. What this shows me is that when God is real in the most mundane situations. Like we read the Bhagavatam and then suddenly we put God in this huge transcendent dimension, the Govardhana Leela and all this kind of stuff and Vrindavan, and we create a fantasy. But the reality is you work in a phone shop in East London and the divine can appear in that context. The Lord or Devi, whoever it is, that manifestation can happen. And when Guruji tells us, have faith that Sri Hari is with you at all times. Have faith in the divine name, that he is with you. Have faith that the Guru is with you. And then you see Ravi, East London, Arsenal fan, working in a phone shop to make ends meet while you're at university, suddenly gets this person coming waving a stick. It's the divine mother fulfilling her promise. That transcendent divine mother is coming to you in a phone shop in East London. And that context, we need to start really understanding that the possibility of knowing God in the most mundane way possible, it's really there. Yeah. It is all there. It's available. And that's what your experience inspires me when I hear that.
Yeah, I love it. I'm ready for the next one, me personally. So, I mean, is that the end of the experience with...
Pretty much.
With Ma?
Pretty much, yeah.
So, what's the next one that's like this? Because again, it's not about just sort of carting one out after the other. I think it's just that, as he just said, there's a lot to draw out of that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we're looking at the normality of it. We're looking at the tangible nature of this, that it's not coming in Vrindavan. It's not coming in, wherever. Yeah, like some exalted holy site. It's coming in the everyday situation, the context in which it comes, how she speaks. All of it is, I think, beautiful insight. So that's why I would like to hear more if there's something.
That's fine. There was another experience that comes to mind, which happened in London, actually. So it was one night I was with Guruji. And we'd spend a lot of downtime together. Sometimes we'd watch movies. Just hang out. And in those days, it was just me and him sometimes, which was really nice. When I reflect back, I was really privileged to be with him and in that period of time. And so one night we stayed up fairly late and Guruji said, look, it's time for us to go to sleep. Let's go to bed. So we went to the room. In my room, we were sharing the room, as we always did. And he said, look, Rav, my legs are hurting. Can you press my legs so I can fall asleep? I was like, yes, Guruji. It'd be my honor to press your legs till you fall asleep. It was nice. So I started pressing his legs. And after some time, I felt like he was falling asleep. So I thought maybe this is a good time for me to fall asleep. And so I'd let go and try and jump into bed. And he'd realize, wake up and say, can you start pressing my feet again? It's really hurting. Why do you stop? And I was like, oh. And this went on probably, this would regularly go on for a couple of hours. And then eventually, he started to scream, like hysterically. I'm in pain. Ravi, I'm in pain, bro. I was like, bro, what can I do? Can I help you? What can I get you some water? And he was like, water? Paracetamol? Can I get you a paracetamol for that pain? And he was like, no, it's devastating. And I was really worried about him because he said, I think I'm going to die. I think this is it. This is it for me, Rav. And I'm like, bro, no, don't die. Please, not on my watch. Because I don't know what everyone's going to... I think he had a program the day later. And I was like, what's everyone going to think? I got rid of you. So I said, bro, please don't go anywhere. Then he said, okay, don't. And then he went really calm and he said, look, it's going to be okay. I was like, why is it going to be okay? He said, Shirdi Baba has just told me it's going to be fine. I was like, really? Is he here? And he was like, no. He's next door.
So how old were you then? This is like much later.
I think like, yeah, I was in my 19-ish. He was in his early 20s.
Yeah.
And he goes, he's next door. I was like, all right, okay. So he said it's going to be fine. He said, yeah, it's going to be fine. And then he goes, you just need to go and see him and just get some, he wants to give you something to help me. And I was like, really? So, and this bamboozled me. Like you said, I'm a normal guy, right? And okay, I've had Mahakali's darshan. But no, this didn't compute in my head. Why is there someone else next door who wants to give you something to make you better? I was like, no, I can't go and get it. I can't. He said, well, what's wrong with you? I was like, no, I just can't go through the door. I can't. He's not there. And he said, no, Ravi, he is there. Go and get the vibhuti for me. Go. He's going to give you some vibhuti. That's what he's going to give you. So I was like, I can't. So I went to the door. I tried to open the door and I physically couldn't move. I was so afraid of what would be behind the door that I couldn't. And Guruji started to scream, you're killing me, bro. It's because of you I'm not going to be here anymore. And he was screaming really loud. So eventually, this is going for like 10 minutes now, 10, 15 minutes of Guruji screaming. I'm panicking. Like,
so we are laughing, but in that situation, you genuinely believed he was going to probably leave the body or whatever.
Yeah. But also I was just paralyzed and I couldn't stop him because my mind was just like, you can't go through that door. You just can't. There's something there that you just don't want to see. Don't go through the door. And I was like, no, I can't go through that door. And I was paralyzed, literally paralyzed. And then eventually Guruji stopped screaming and he went quiet. And he said, it's okay. Don't worry about it. I might not make it till tomorrow. It's fine. Just go to sleep.
It's such a guilt trip,
Yeah.
isn't it?
And I was like, oh, what have I done? I've lost you. Then he started to scream again. He goes, okay, he's come back. He's come back. He's giving you a chance. Go through the door. And I couldn't. So I said, yes, bro, I'm going to go through the door. I got up. I didn't think about it too much. And I got to the door and I held the hand and I go, bro, I can't do it. I can't go through the door. He was like, yes, you can go through the door. I'm telling you, you can go through the door. So I opened the door. I went into the passageway. And he goes, well done. Go in the other room now and speak to Shirdi Baba. So I went to the next door and I just was paralyzed again. And I was like, bro, I can't open that door. He's in there. I can't go in there. I just can't do it. Please forgive me. So I went back to him and I was at his feet saying, I'm really sorry. I can't go through the door. And he was screaming, saying, you've just taken my life. You know,
but isn't that quite irrational though? You got your bro's life on the line.
Yeah.
And then you just because you're scared to go through that door.
I can't tell you why, Myron. I just can't tell you why. I'm just trying to be honest about it. I couldn't open the door. It was just something in my mind physically that was stopping me out of absolute fear. And then so eventually he was screaming in the background, bro, please save me. And I went to the end of the passageway and I just ran as hard as I can and I burst into the room. The door, it was very dramatic. The door banged the wall. I ran in. There was nothing there. There's this anticlimax. I was like, bro, bro, there's nothing there. No one's here. He goes, it's because of you. Would you think he can wait all night for you to do your game? You had your chance and you've messed up. You've cost me my life. It's your fault. So I walked back to him really sad. And I said, do you want that glass of water? And he was like, no, I don't want that glass of water. And then all of a sudden I heard a bang. And he said, go to the room now, Ravi. So I just did what I was told at that point. I walked to the room. I think also because I tried to go in the room and I saw there was no one there, I just felt liberated from that fear.
Yeah.
I walked into the room and there was a huge picture of Shirdi Sai in the room, in my mum's room. And it was covered in vibhuti. It just had material manifested then and there. And he said, take the vibhuti and bring it to me. So I took some paper, brought the vibhuti to him. And he said, hold on a minute, Shirdi Sai Baba is telling me there's something else. There's some laddu he's left there for me. Go and get the laddu. So I went into the room. I said, I can't find the laddu. He said, look on his face. And the laddu was materializing out of his mouth. So I took the laddu from his mouth.
No, hold on.
Yeah.
Hold
The
on.
laddu was coming, like it was halfway out, and I held it and it came out. And I took it to him and I gave it to him.
So how big's this picture?
It was a life-size picture.
Life-size picture. And this is like Shirdi Baba standing like this with a blessing hand.
Yeah.
And he does a
With a
beard.
glass cover.
Glass cover.
Yeah. So, and then around his mouth where the beard is, you see your laddu start to come out.
Yeah. It was already halfway out, like 3/4 out.
Yeah.
And then I took
Out of
it
the glass.
out of the glass. And so I took it to him. I ate the laddu.
Do you know what the thing is? I laugh because it's just amazing, but I don't laugh because I disbelieve, because I've done the same thing but not out of glass.
Yeah.
I've had the murti come out of Guruji's chest to my hand, and so for another time. But my point is that glass somehow for me still is a little like crazier. But sure.
So you gave it to Guruji, he ate the laddu.
He ate the laddu, and then he said, "Okay, should we go to sleep now?" And I was like, "Bro, what was that all about?" And he was just trying to explain to me that he said to me straight after that it happened. He said, "You see, Ravi, God will manifest, but only in the way that you're ready to see him. Everyone wants bells and whistles, but he will come the way you're ready to see him. And in this instance, you wasn't ready to see him. So
in a physical form.
In a physical form, so he found a way."
Okay, that was actually my question. Why didn't you actually see Shirdi Baba, even though he said he was there? And so it was basically that fear, that trepidation, or I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
You weren't ready to see him. And so when Krishna comes, however one approaches me, I approach him in the same way. But that fear was stopping that proper
It
darshan.
paralyzed me.
Yeah. And so he still found a way to get to you.
Yeah.
What I find interesting is that happens despite the Ma darshans. You know what I mean? That like that you did see her in the physical form.
Yeah.
But for some reason in that moment that you weren't ready to see Shirdi Baba.
Yeah. Why do you think that is?
Do you know what? I don't know. I can't comprehend it. I think even after I had darshan of Ma Kali that night, the next night Guruji said, "Do you remember everything she said?" And I was like, "No." He said, "Bring a notepad tonight." I was like, "Oh, okay." I decided to sleep on the floor in the living room instead of going back into the room. I waited till he fell asleep and I just slept on the sofa. I was too afraid. So I think I didn't have time to think about Ma appearing. It just happened.
Do you think maybe part of the reason is because, I'm just speculating here, but like, because these things weren't happening because of your own intense longing, it wasn't because of your spiritual, let's say, realizations, but they were sort of being graced to you with outside of your expectations and control or whatever, that it just felt maybe a little, I don't want to use the word unnatural, but like difficult to process and to digest, because it's just not, you weren't longing for that. You weren't saying, please come. You know what I mean? Like, because if I was praying for Nishingadev to give me a darshan and then he appeared, I would hope that I wouldn't run away as a response, whether I would like avoid going into a room with him, whatever. I don't know how it would be, but I just feel like that the fact that you didn't want it somehow, that it wasn't something that you were thinking of, might play a role.
I think so. I think, look, from my perspective, the only thing I wanted to do was to be with Guruji. I wanted to be with my brother and spend time with him intensely, right? That's all I ever wanted. I never wanted any type of darshan. I just want to be, even today, we're here in Sri Pittanilya, but I've come for him. I always just come for him. And I think maybe there was some grace or some mercy that he offered me, that I had these experiences, but I never asked for them and I didn't want them. I wanted to be with him. That's front and forward of everything is him. That's all I wanted.
I think I know the answer to this, but why did he do such a dramatic thing to get you to get Shirdi Baba into the picture, Shirdi Sai Baba to get into the picture of this whole leader? Why not just say, Ravi, I'm going to hold your hand and we're going to see Shirdi Sai Baba now?
I mean, that would be really easy. That would have been so much easier.
And this is the thing. Like, I'm guessing you just don't know. You don't know.
I don't know.
Right. And this is the point. A lot of these questions I'm going to ask you, you're going to say, I just don't know, because you don't get a post-match analysis from Guruji about why these miraculous things are happening. They happen. Occasionally might give a tiny bit of an indicator of what this is about, and then life moves on. And it goes back to that same point. It's just a natural occurrence as what's going on. That's why I think a lot of the questions I'll ask you, you'll just go, I don't know.
Yeah, and I'm trying to be honest with you because I don't want to. I haven't sat here and tried to think of a genuine answer to impress anyone. It's just the genuine truth
I
of how
think
it's
I think the
happening.
experiences are impressive enough.
But
Like,
I don't.
Well, I get his point though. Like if you go around and say like I didn't want the darshans and I ran away and my guru was about to die and still I was just like no, not going. Doesn't necessarily paint you in the best light.
No,
does
it doesn't. It doesn't.
But it's all good. Now, this is a little bit personal bias, but I'd be remiss if we didn't touch upon this because I know you've had an experience with Nishingadev also.
Yes.
Right? And given my affinity for Lord Narasimha, you're on my podcast. I'm going to be a little greedy. Could you share that with us, please?
Yeah. No, happy to. So I had Narasimhadev's darshan the first time, just after Mahakali's darshan. I think it was in Mauritius. I said to you, I didn't want to stay in the room. I didn't want to stay in the room, not because of the darshan I had with Mahakali. It was actually the day after I had another darshan with Narasimhadev. But he came, someone appeared in the room, so had reached out. So Guruji, obviously I'd started to ask about Mahakali, then Narasimhadev was another very ferocious picture in the room, so I asked about him. And I think he appeared in the room. He did, because I heard his voice and someone speaking to me, and then someone tapped me on my shoulder here, and my whole body shook inside, like completely shook. And I was so scared.
so this is again Guruji meditating, or
Yeah,
what?
yeah, he was meditating and
Similar context to the Kali darshan.
absolutely. But I was so scared I didn't turn around to look.
So you just felt a hand on your shoulder.
I felt a hand on my shoulder. And then I spoke to Guruji after, and he said, "Oh, you had darshan of Narasimhadev." And I was like, but I didn't know what he said to me because he didn't speak to me in English. He spoke to me in a completely different language. And
But did you see him?
No, I didn't.
So you had hand on his shoulder and a voice.
And a voice, yeah.
Okay.
Because I was trying to pretend I was sleeping again. Just,
And he spoke to you, but not in English. So you
not
don't
in
know what he
English,
said.
in a language that I never had heard of. It sounded South Indian, but it wasn't Hindi. I could understand a little bit of that, but I couldn't understand anything he was saying. So, yeah, that was the first experience of Narasimhadev I had.
And Guruji just confirmed. You wouldn't have known it was Narasimhadev.
No, I had no idea. He said you had the darshan of
Yeah,
Narasimhadev.
through Guruji you knew. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. He said you're extremely lucky, and I was like, okay, yeah, I am really lucky. I didn't know how to feel about it. And then the next day, that's when I thought, well, I'm not staying in this room again. This is too much. I didn't plan for that, and I don't want to bring a notepad into the room. It's just not happening. So fast forward maybe how many years? When did we open the
2007.
Yeah, so fast forward to 2007. The Lakshmi Narasimhadev temple was opened in Feltham, and
In London.
London, and at your dad's place,
Yeah.
right? And
I was already in the picture by then.
yeah, you were right. And the night before the opening of the temple, Guruji was at my place, same setup. We were together, and I was in the room with him, and he was meditating, preparing himself for the temple opening the next day. I think before that I was pressing his feet, and then he started to become very serious, go into his meditation. And then all of a sudden I felt the room change, like in a way that I had never felt before, a complete shift in vibration in the room. And I felt someone was coming, and I was a lot older, right? So I was ready to experience something was going to happen. And I knew that, right? And I was ready to experience whatever that was. And the same voice that had spoke to me in Mauritius, because I was sitting on the floor by Guruji's feet, the same voice that had spoken to me in Mauritius started to speak to me again.
You recognized it?
Immediately. He spoke to me. He didn't say anything to me. I wasn't looking because I was scared. Even though I was a lot braver than I was probably a few years before. And then he left. Guruji, about 20 minutes later, came out of his meditation and said, "So, you had Darshan of Narasimhadev?" I was like, "I think so, yes." He said, "What did he say to you?" I said, "I don't know." He said, "What do you mean you don't know?" I said, "Well, he spoke a language I didn't speak. I don't speak, or I don't understand. I don't know what he said." He said, "What's wrong with you?" I was like, "What do you mean? What's wrong with me?" He didn't. I don't understand him. So he said to me, "Why didn't you ask him to speak in a language you do understand?" I was like, can't really say that to Narasimhadev.
You didn't realize it was an option on the table, right?
I love how Guruji's just like, well, that's the obvious solution. Why didn't you just ask Narasimhadev to speak in a different translate?
But also he wasn't when he was in the room, initially he was roaring a little bit, right? So I could hear his roar, and then he started to speak. So I didn't feel there was an right time for me to say, excuse me.
So you never really saw him.
No, I
at this
heard
point.
him. At this point, I didn't look up.
And you heard like a
Yeah, like growling.
a growling.
And I was like,
Hopefully not like the sound Myron just did.
no.
I'm not good at growling.
It sounds like my sister-in-law's cat. No, it didn't sound like him.
Yeah.
It was ferocious, right? So I didn't want to stop and say, excuse me.
Yeah.
And I know it sounds a very matter of fact the way I'm describing it, but that's just
Everything does when you describe
Yeah.
these things, yeah.
Natural.
And that's how it was. And so Guruji said, okay, I got told off for not speaking up. And I was like, but how do I do that? And so Guruji went back into his meditation, a bit upset with me. I knew I'd done something wrong. And then after some time, Guruji said, he's coming again. I can feel him. And I could feel it too. The vibration had started. That mood had come back into the room. So all of a sudden, everything stopped and it just felt electric again. And I heard him. So I fell to his feet and he started to speak. So he had big feet, claws, big nails.
I'm going to stop you there because I wanted the details, right? So you see a hand, how big?
His feet. I didn't look up at this stage.
So you're just looking at his feet, looking down.
Yeah.
And you see claws.
Yeah, he had feet. Big
So claws on his feet
Yeah.
and his hands.
I didn't look up. So I
Okay.
was looking down
yeah, his
and
feet.
he had like a yellow dhoti, maybe something turmeric color.
Yeah.
And then so I realized, God, he's in the room. So I touched his, bowed down to him, and he started to talk to me again in the same language. And then I said to him, while he was talking, I said, Narasimhadev Bhagwan, I don't understand. Forgive me.
Only looking at his feet?
Yeah. I didn't want to look up. I was too afraid.
Yeah.
And then he said to me, oh, he stopped and he said, oh, you don't understand. Is this better? He spoke in Hindi, I think. Then he spoke in, I still wasn't too sure because I'm not very fluent. I used to watch Hindi movies, but the subtitles were a big friend of mine. And then I said, and then he said, so is this better for you? And he spoke to me in English, Creole and in English.
He spoke Creole.
He spoke Creole and then English. And then and I said, okay, I understand. And then he said to me, your brother has called me to see you today. And he said, I just wanted to tell you that, can you share with the people at the Narasimhadev temple in Feltham that I will always be present there. I'm always there and I'm always with Guruji. Wherever he is, I am. And I was like, yes, I can tell you that. I can tell everyone that. And then as he said that, I looked up at him and he became like a light. He was just light radiating. And became small and he went into Guruji. And then he just disappeared.
So you didn't see his face as such? Like
I saw somehow I saw his face, yeah. I saw
like
him,
a silhouette or
a
something?
silhouette of who he was.
Yeah, outline.
Outline of him.
Yeah.
And his feet. I touched his feet. And
Saw the
he,
turmeric dhoti. yellow- yeah.
and he tapped me on the shoulder.
Yeah.
Again, I felt the same vibration in my body when he
Yeah.
blessed me. And then he left.
And just condensed into some kind of light.
Light and then into Guruji.
And Guruji was meditating at the time.
Intense.
I mean, I have to say, like, just from the message of what he said to you, people still find it maybe a little weird because I have, there's so many temples of Narasimhadev and Bhakti Marga in the world. And I know he said that he'll always be wherever Guruji is as well. But that Feltham temple for me has always been where I've most felt Narasimhadev. I haven't been there in years, but my point is just, it's where I first fell in love with Narasimhadev. It's where I first got to know about Narasimhadev. It's, I think of that temple, I think of that deity, and it's very, very warm feelings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, so the next day, Guruji asked me to share it with everyone.
Yeah, I remember you sharing it. Yeah. So what do you say to someone like who's listening and they hear Ravi say things like Narasimhadev spoke Creole?
I think,
And then English
I'm concerned some people will look at all this and feel like it's almost offensive. Like it's such a, I mean it in the sense that it's such a normalization of these they're gods. They're gods for these people, right? They're praying to them every day. You know, it's they're building temples for these deities, doing intense tapasya and sadhana, as we know. And we're talking about them sort of going, oh, is this better? Speaking Creole, speaking English, going into cell phone shops, you know, this kind of thing. I think part of all of this is just, I think people have an idea of what God has to be. And maybe that idea is healthy. Maybe it's a culture management principle, like that it's better that most people think of God in this very exalted and majestic way, because it prevents them from becoming offensive. It prevents them from becoming from normalizing something that they shouldn't normalize, that they should hold in dear reverence. And so there's something to it, right? I'm not trying to break that down, but at the same time, I find it both beautiful and necessary to open your mind, or to open the possibility that God is the nearest, the dearest, the closest, the most intimate, the most normal, the most natural, because at some point, it's all of this that's unnatural. It's the idea that societally conforming norms are the normal thing, and that's all fine, and all the, you know, the pomp and all of that. But in the truth, that which is most natural to us, our soul, God, all of this is actually nature. That's the real natural default normative thing. All of this is the Maya, the odd stuff in a sense. And so I don't know, I think there's something incredibly poetic and beautiful about just how normal it all is.
There is a tension here, isn't there? Because if everyone were to just take Ravi's account and stories as this is what God is, appears in cell phone shops, speaks Creole, you can downgrade the whole nature of divinity to an absolute mundane level, that whereby your spiritual progress becomes, you know, pointless or redundant.
But that's what I'm saying. I think there's merit to having it up there. Yeah,
exactly. So I think that you got to have God up there. You've got to have the Lord in the most exalted, position possible, infinite. Like we say, you always say Satyam Jnanam Anandam, like the Shastra says, and that. But at the same point, I think that the take home lesson is, Guruji has somehow made that Sri Hari, that ultimate supreme personality who is Parabrahman, the totality of everything, he's given a window to access him in the most seemingly mundane situations, for Ravi specifically. Because this isn't an experience that has been going on throughout all the devotees in Bhakti Marga.
No,
not at all.
To be very honest about that.
Yeah,
right?
we've all had certain wonderful experiences and miraculous experiences with Guruji to a degree, but not to this degree, right? Yeah. So I do think we need to sort of register that it is through Guruji that somehow that ultimate supreme Lord has become intimate, and for Ravi specifically, and he's now a mouthpiece for us to hear it, to maybe digest, and then say the possibility of knowing God in this reality is possible.
I think that's that you're right. That last sentence is because I think as much as God should remain on the exalted altar of everyone's heart, mind, temple, it's also important not to exempt God from the normal and the mundane, because it's not only to relegate him to the mundane. We're not saying that only consider him now in these mundane terms. No. But don't exempt him from the mundane and the normal and the everyday, because I think part of what the Bhagavatam teaches as well, and I actually take this as a genuine important lesson, when they speak about the different levels of devotees, they say that actually the gradation of a beginner devotee to an advanced devotee is their capacity to see God in more places. So at the beginning, you only see God in the temple or in the picture, in the image. And at the highest level, you see God everywhere, right? So I'm not saying that that's what you're experiencing or anything like that, but by bringing God into these environments, whether it's a phone shop or just a house or a bedroom, or normalizing, having a conversation, for me, it's all about making God part of our conscious sort of awareness and consideration at all times, that God is with me at all times, can appear at any time. Therefore, I should be of that mindset, of that awareness. But
we have to be vigilant to the Kanishta kind of adhikar, let's call it like that, where you see ungroundedness, that they hear someone like Ravi's stories, and they start to get fantasy starts to build, and you go, oh, this person came into my workplace, I think it was Divine Mother. Oh, I heard a growling sound when it was actually the photocopying machine, and I think Nrsingadev is here now, right? And it's like, you can get into all kinds of fantasies and so on. But the reason, this is what I look about Ravi is, he's probably the most one of the most grounded people you could
Yeah.
possibly meet.
Yeah.
And I hope that comes across in the podcast. But you are. You're like,
Thanks. But what I would like to, I'm happy that I am grounded. But what I'd like to say is none of these experiences happen without Guruji, right? So,
Right. This is what I want to point out.
and this is the most key piece here. Guruji, in his true form, in who he is here to bring the divine to us, to make the divine accessible, because he is ultimately part of that divinity, right? He is that divinity.
Yeah.
And only through his grace and through his punya that I've had that chance to be in that place. I don't know why me. I really don't. Sometimes I ask myself why not Revati? You know, you deserve it, bro. You know, but genuinely you do. You've dedicated your life and you're wearing orange.
Don't worry, I've had my experience.
And yourself, Myron, right? But I don't understand why I've been given this grace. Apart from it was just Guruji's blessings, and I feel very, very grateful for it. So it's nice to share, but of course, like you guys said, it's out there, and it's something that I don't know how people will comprehend.
You
So I
don't attach a lot of commentary to these experiences, do you? And
No.
like, what does it mean for my life, and where am I going in life, and all this stuff.
No,
Like
no,
you
not
just
at
see them as experiences that your brother, who happens to be your Sadguru,
Yes.
has given you, and that's it.
And that's absolutely all it is. It's just a blessing to be with him, and through that blessing, I've had experiences that he's allowed me to partake in, and that's all it is for me. I'm very grateful, and if I can share it, and it helps some of the devotees understand that God is accessible through him now here, then that's fantastic. But that's the only reason I'd share them. I don't have any.
I think it's a pure intent. It's a beautiful intent. But Mike, what do you think you have a takeaway about like how people should take these? What should someone do with this? Not a devotee now, because he said, you know, if the devotees listen to this and it makes them feel like re-encouraged or whatever, that, you know, God is accessible through Guruji here and now. Brilliant. What about everybody else?
So I think I'm always sympathetic to the skeptic, to the ultra rationalist, because that's what I am. I consider myself in that sort of category. It took me a long time to sort of to really accept Guruji because of my mind is very, very strong and so on. So I'm very sympathetic to those who have the same nature. And I would just say, you don't have to actively believe Ravi. And we're not trying to market this in any way. That isn't the purpose of this episode. But suspend your judgment, I would say, and just potentially explore the possibility that such things like this can happen. That it isn't just in books, it isn't just in ancient scriptures that divinity can manifest in our lives. It's possible that you can have these tremendously, glorious experiences that Ravi's had. They can happen in the here and now in 2025, where we are now in the modern age. And so just potentially put it on the table and leave it there. That's what I would say. And maybe just meditate on that. And what I always say to the ultra rationalists is, I hope maybe Ravi's experiences have inspired you to maybe utter a prayer that says, Lord, if Ravi, he seems like a decent guy, and I don't think he's out to deceive anyone. He's probably just presenting honestly what he's experienced. If it can happen to him, Lord, in some way, if you're out there, can you come in my life and show yourself and give me some kind of confidence and faith? I think that's what I would hope that your experience gives to that kind of person.
I agree. I think to add to what you both said, I think it also paints Guruji in a different light, because it's not a Guruji of pomp. It's not a Guruji of making a big deal out of things and acting a certain way. It's a very humble Guruji. It's a very natural Guruji. It's a Guruji that does these things out of the limelight. And I think that's important because, as I said at the beginning, I'll say it again, when accusations are made in the sense of, oh, it's just a magic man, or it's some mysticism, or it's just powers and whatever, sometimes I just think to myself, you know, we spend our lives in sadhana, in pursuit of love of God, a glimpse of God, whatever you want to call it, but love of God is obviously the ultimate aim. Guruji has never deviated from that. He's only ever taught everyone to love God. He's never changed that. He may have changed presentation here and there, and so many things have evolved and gone through iterations in Bhakti Marga. But one thing that's never, ever changed is his relentless pursuit of helping us love God, to forge a love relationship with God, right? And throughout all of this, people pray for this, people long for God, people have this, connection through all these different traditions and religions and whatever else. And Guruji is literally here making these stories real, making these things real to us, tangible to us, of course, in a more extreme way in your case, and in other ways for people, like for you, for me, and for many others. And to have it just be dismissed as, oh, it's a bit of magic, or it's mysticism, and that's a turn off. Or
the word mysticism.
Yeah, as if that's somehow like a dirty thing, or tantra.
Yeah.
I feel is an understandable cop-out. It's an understandable freezing at the door handle, right? Because just as you're afraid in your situations, I think people are afraid to hear this and consider that it might be true. Because if it is true, what does it mean for them and their lives? What does it mean for their relationship with the divine? What does it mean for the conclusions that they have held about so many different things? It's a paradigm breaker. And I think therefore pointing out how Guruji's mom didn't enjoy any of this, how the family struggled with different parts of it, how you struggle with different parts of it, is actually an important part of it, because it makes the audience who has the tendency to be skeptical and point the finger as the line of defense and say, no, this is just that dodgy stuff. Recognize in yourself that it may be your fear speaking, that maybe it's not the dodgy stuff.
Yeah, no, I think some Vaishnavas in particular, let's say, might listen, and the natural reflex is to dismiss this as mysticism. Mysticism is dodgy. It's for some Vaishnavas, it's seen as a dodgy situation. Oh, mystical and not shastric.
But the reason I say fear is because it's irrational. Because when it happens to the Saligram of Radharaman, and then it transforms into the shape as it is worshipped in the temple, then that's not mysticism. That's not tantra or magic.
That's
Leela.
Grace.
That's
Leela.
Grace.
Yeah.
Right. And I think therefore the way we attribute this is we can't do that. We can't, sort of paint by one standard in one direction and a different one in another.
So you're saying basically the moment it comes imminent in your face, we use the word mysticism or tantra or whatever it is. But when it's an ancient story, it becomes it's Leela.
I don't mind people, just for the record, I'm not saying that it's irrational not to believe this and therefore follow Paramahamsa Vishwananda. That's not what I'm saying. It's perfectly fine for you not to believe any of this. But I don't think it needs to be thrown mud at. Because that's what it really is. When you say, oh, it's just magic and tantra, whatever, you're throwing mud at the situation. And I think that's an impulsive reaction out of fear.
But don't you also think, Ravi, that the experiences that you had were really prolific in Guruji's earlier years, but as time has gone on, Guruji has really, I don't say he reduced or...
I think he has.
Yeah, you might say he's reduced.
He's reduced.
And he's focused... You see the miracles go, let's say, less, and the teachings and the pushing towards love, Shastra, God, and the real streamlining of sadhana and so on, and the push in his satsangs to, you must attain the Lord's feet, you must attain his grace. That is what's happened as the years have rolled by. Would you agree with that sort of situation?
Go ahead, Mara.
No, I would agree.
Yeah.
I think the focus has changed you.
Yeah.
And I think it's because we're in a different time, in a different phase of his mission. And I think...
because as he grows, but the potential is that if miracles are still there, you attract superficiality, shallowness, and that kind of stuff.
I was going to say that if I ever managed to have a conversation with Guruji on my podcast, I would always tell myself, I would ask him this, how his own outlook on his mission and his devotees has changed over the years. Because I feel like Guruji, the young Guruji that you described to me, and even when I met him in his late 20s, I feel like he's discovered a cynical world. I think he's discovered a world that is not as innocent and natural and whatever as he was in his own nature. Because I think as he was just so giving, as he told you, I'm happy to help people, Ravi, right? I think that version of Guruji met a world that wasn't maybe as sweet and innocent and whatever as his nature was. And I don't mean that to say that, Guruji's naive or something like this. I'm just saying that it's a clash of natures. And I think the more he has gone on into this world, the more his intent never wavers. I mean, he's still here to help. So the way he helps has to change, because as he produces all of these miraculous events, the narrative goes too much in that direction, and it starts to attract that superficial crowd and people like sort of coming for all the wrong reasons. And so it starts to undermine a little bit his real intent, which is to help people love God.
Yeah.
And so in a sense, he's happy to scale that back, not because he's like lost the ability or less keen or whatever. I think it's just more, there's an overarching reason I'm here that he's not willing to compromise on.
Yeah.
And if that starts to get in the way, he just stops it. I remember early days Shivaratri, when I was doing Seva here in Shirdi, I was a video guy. I was doing video editing, video guy.
Were you?
Yeah. And Guruji did a Shivaratri where he materialized lingams. Hiranya Garbha lingam, golden lingam, right? All this kind of stuff. And I was there editing the video to publish online. And we did publish it. And there was immediate pushback. Oh, fake, oh, this, oh, that. A lot of people also came because of it. It was both directions, right? But both of them weren't good, because if you only came because of that, then they came expecting a show. They came wanting the show, demanding the show. It wasn't for love. It wasn't for love of God. It wasn't because of the philosophy or the teachings or anything like this attracted them. And the ones who started slandering, it caused disturbance. It's just disturbance right, left, and center, right? And he just tells me, like, I'll take the video down. And I remember the next year he said, no cameras.
Yeah.
If I'm doing Shivaratri, there's just no cameras. To this day, as you mentioned earlier, he still makes lingams, but he'll do it sort of off in the corner. He'll do it sometimes like just, not even facing the crowd. Again, we reiterate to people, please don't film this, because we're not trying to make a show out of this, right? So that's what I mean. I think it's a Guruji that is adapting to the response of the world in such a way as to not compromise his actual primary purpose.
But I also think it's his streamlining of his mission and his intention and the intensity of who he is as a Sadguru. So he starts off, as you said, the Vibhooti coming, the big announcement, if you like, you know, massive transition for the family and so on. He starts helping people, but he's just helping people what their materialistic problems, often healing them. I've got cancer, blessings, and they suddenly get cured. All of these things start happening. But he's with people a lot, just having fun sometimes, just chilling out and having fun with devotees. I remember when in 2005, a lot of the time I spent with Guruji was just having fun, right? But as time has gone on, his satsangs he started to speak more. In 2005, he was just starting to speak, I think, right? And then he's speaking much, much more. Then he introduces Shastra, then Siddhanta. All of these things start happening, and you start to see he starts to become more guru-like, let's say even more guru-like, if I put it like that, and even withdrawing from the people more. And that's what we're starting to see, we've seen in the last few years. If you asked how Guruji is now with devotees compared to where he was in 2005, in my experience, vastly different, right? And this is all because he is intensifying the level of what he expects with devotees. He's taking devotees on a journey and to an intensification whereby we are here to surrender to the feet of Sri Hari. And so hence the miracles, as you said, can become a distraction at that point. It was a necessary announcement and part of his joyous intimacy with devotees in general, but now the business of attaining the feet of Sri Hari becomes paramount, and so therefore he is streamlining his mission and his persona in that respect, I think.
Yeah, I think that's accurate.
Yeah,
I don't sort of really want to add too much more from my side. I mean, if there's anything else that either of you want to say to what was shared?
No. From my side, I thank you both for the platform. It was really nice to sit down and spend some time with you.
I mean, I've heard some of these stories before, but it's just, I don't know, just listening to you in this context, especially, it's just, it's quite phenomenal, and it makes me happy. It makes me laugh as well, makes me smile.
Yeah, I you're right. I was smiling throughout because it's just, it's a version of God that I love very much. It's a version of Guruji that I love very much. It resonates with who I am and how I approach my spirituality. So again, thank you for sharing. And I hope, as we all did, we all expressed our wishes and sort of what we wanted this to do for people. And I hope it does, and I hope it's well received. And if it's not for you, no problem. See you next episode. But Jai Gurudev, guys.
Jai Gurudev. Thank you, everyone.